Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. We had executive session tonight in a different room, so we did not have the opportunity to salute the flag, so we will do that now. Please rise. Okay, this is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Berners Township. Notice of the time and place of this meeting were provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and to the Township Clerk, and a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education offices in accordance with PL 1975, Chapter 231A. There'll be two opportunities for public comment as always. First, public comment will be on agenda items. Second, public comment will be on whatever's on your mind. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and sign in and state your name and address. Brings the board president's comments. Welcome back. About to kick off the new school year. A bunch of activities are already being kicked off. The work obviously never ends. It's been going on through the summer, and the good work is continuing. We hope it continues into the fall. But with that, I'll roll right into superintendent's report. Oh, I'm sorry. Was it on? Okay. Let's do the roll call, Mr. Rolla.
Mr. Salmon?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
Ms. Light?
Here.
Ms. Hira? Ms. McCune?
Here.
Mr. Molinari?
Here.
Mr. Amin? Ms. Chipak?
Here.
And Mr. Rascio?
Here. Sorry about missing a roll. Got to knock the rust off. Mr. McCarron.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Molinari. So here we are in August. We are about a week away from having our students back next week on Wednesday, September 6th. So we really look forward to that. Staff will be returning on Friday, September 1st for their first in-service day and having their second in-service day on September 5th, Tuesday. As I mentioned, the kids will come back on September 6th. So we really look forward to having everyone back in our buildings. As Mr. Molinari mentioned, obviously we have been busy with our usual summer routines, working on facilities, curriculum writing, and so on, and we're really close. I've been walking through the buildings quite a bit in the last couple days, and things are looking good. So just thank you to everyone that's been working hard this summer, preparing things for our students' return. There are 4 items under superintendent's report tonight. Sorry, 5, thank you. We have our student government bylaws that we've been collecting, and they're ready for board approval at this point in time. We have a HIB, one Singleton HIB report. We have some overnight events for the Ridge High School field hockey team and the fall and winter forensics overnight trips, and a research project approval.
Can I have a motion on the 5 items, please? Mr. Salmon? Ms. Light? Questions before we vote? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Ms. Light?
Yes.
Ms. McCune?
Yes.
Mr. Molinari?
Yes.
Ms. Chipak?
Yes.
And Mr. Rascio?
Yes. Okay, that'll bring us to our first public comment. Please step forward and sign in, state your name, and please keep it to 3 minutes or less. Okay, I'm seeing no one for public comment. We're up to approval of minutes. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Salmon. Ms. Light. Questions on the minutes? Mr. Rollo.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Ms. Light?
Yes.
Ms. McCune?
Abstain.
Mr. Molinari?
Abstain.
Ms. Chipak?
Yes.
And Mr. Rascio?
Yes. Okay, that's going to bring us to the Finance Committee report. There are 47 items under Finance. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Salmon. Ms. McCune. Questions on anything under Finance?
Do you want me to read out what they are?
You don't have to read them out, they're all posted.
Okay.
Unless
great.
somebody has a question on one of the specific items. Mr. Roloff?
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Ms. Light,
Yes.
Ms. McCune,
Yes.
Mr. Molinari,
Yes.
Ms. Chippak,
Yes.
and Mr. Rashio.
Yes.
Okay, that's going to bring us to the Personnel Committee report. There is no reporting out tonight, but there are 42 items.
Up to addendum 45.
Oh, 45 with the addendum.
With the addendum, yeah.
45 items under personnel. Can I have a motion? Ms. White? Mr. Salmon? Any questions for anything under personnel? All right, seeing none, Mr. Rollo?
Mr. Salmon,
Yes for all of them except for number 4. I abstain on number 4.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Ms. Light,
Yes.
Ms. McCune,
Yes.
Mr. Molinari,
Yes.
Ms. Chippak,
Yes.
and Mr. Rashio.
Yes.
That will bring us to Policy Committee. There are 3 items under policy. Can I have a motion, please? Ms. White, Ms. Chipak, and I believe there is a Policy Committee report tonight.
No, I think I reported that last time. And this is just second reading on one that hasn't changed since last time.
That's right.
Okay, any questions on the items under policy?
I did have one question on the virtual remote instruction plan. One of the things that I noticed when we were looking at breaks for the middle school and the high school, there didn't seem to be any breaks factored in for the kindergarten through 5th grade units, and that seemed like a long day to be virtual without breaks.
Hi, thanks for the question. So within the designated time periods that the students are with the teacher kind of sets the breaks for the kids as needed. Because
Do we need to document that in the plan, though?
it's easy enough to do. I can add something for that.
Okay,
No problem.
that'd be great,
Yep.
because I just know how
Sure.
how my 8-year-old
and
would be.
it'd be a little more reassuring to see it in writing.
Yeah,
Sure, we
it
could
would
do
be
that.
good. That was the only thing that I noticed as I was reading through.
Sure, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Anybody else? Mr. Rollo?
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Ms. Light,
Yes.
Ms. McCune,
Yes.
Mr. Molinari,
Yes.
Ms. Chippak,
Yes.
and Mr. Rashio.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. We're to the Curriculum Committee report. There are no items, but I believe there is a report.
Yes. Curriculum met on July 20th. The first item was the placement on the board agenda of the Magruder's American Government Interactive Textbook. This is the staff recommended textbook that was proposed at the May 5th, 2023 Curriculum Committee meeting. 2 community members came to the board office to review the book but did not ask any questions. No questions were received from board members. One board member said he didn't not like the book. Approval will be on the agenda that we actually already voted for. Then there was, am I reading the old ones? No, this is right? Yeah, gosh, it's been a while. All right. Item to be listed under report on progress. There was a new textbook proposed for AP Physics C. There's a link in the minutes to the textbook recommendation form filled out by the staff. And information about the book is posted on the Curriculum Department textbook webpage that you can access through a linked URL. AP Physics C is a course for seniors that are high-achieving physics students. The annual enrollment is about 40 students. Students are eligible to sit for the AP tests in mechanics and electricity and magnetism. This book, which is called Physics for Scientists and Engineers, 6th edition by Tipler and Mosca, is the #1 AP Physics textbook in the country. Although there is no digital access and no online resources, the teachers like the in-depth treatment of calculus in the book and the step-by-step walkthrough of problem solutions. The proposal is to have a class set and books for students to take home. A copy of the textbook will be in the board office for public review. We discussed some committee meeting dates. There was a discussion related to post-secondary planning programming. The administration is exploring options to provide students with additional opportunities to explore post-secondary pathways throughout their time at Ridge. Additionally, at the June 8th, 2023 Brew meeting, from some students on the panel expressed a desire to have more interaction with their school counselor and/or SAC throughout their high school career. The current programming for students is as follows. Ninth graders have the opportunity to meet with their counselors at a minimum of 2 times a year, once to check in early in the year and once at the end for scheduling for sophomore year. 10th graders participate in a lesson on Naviance during the school day delivered by a school counselor and a minimum of 1 meeting with their counselor for scheduling. 11th graders meet with their school counselor for a post-secondary planning assembly in the fall, and in the spring they meet with the school counselor individually for a personalized post-secondary planning session and scheduling. And 12th graders meet with the school counselor for a post-secondary planning assembly, an individual meeting with their school counselor in the fall and the spring to finalize their plans. Options for providing additional post-secondary programming were discussed. This could be delivered a number of ways, including optional workshops during opportunity period or potential graduation credit requirements. Ms. Fox and Ms. Smith shared that the staff are excited to begin offering workshops this fall on a variety of post-secondary planning topics to gauge interest and work through logistical challenges. The administration will continue to develop these options and review them with the committee for approval as required. There was a discussion about the Italian program. There was an Italian teacher who had resigned at the previous board meeting. Since that curriculum committee meeting we had, Ms. Stadler has found a person to come in and teach Italian at 3 levels. There was a discussion related to the enrollment across the foreign languages, with Spanish being the highest, and French and Italian behind that, and then Latin, French, Italian, and Latin around the same enrollment, although it is becoming more difficult to find foreign language teachers, especially Italian teachers. There was a discussion about the voting item we just had about a Ridge High School alumni requesting to interview staff for his college thesis. There was this discussion related to the sociology course. The plan for the high school sociology book is to read behind the old books, and the summer curriculum project will focus on revising the scope and sequence of the course to reflect the rotating drop schedule. Several concerns were raised by board members at the June 22nd meeting regarding the proposed Schaefer book. Mr. Terry presented the responses to the concerns, which are linked in the minutes and are publicly available. Ms. Fox and Mr. Terry addressed each of these concerns. Citations from the book were provided to explain how it addressed topics around marriage, family trends, gender roles, socialization, resources for LGBTQ teens, and the coronavirus. Ms. Fox and Mr. Terry shared how the book offered data and research and opportunities to consider various perspectives on issues some BOE members had concerns about. Ms. Fox and Mr. Terry also noted that the course is an elective, and while the textbook was contemplated with maximum student accessibility in mind, the course may still not be a good fit for all learners. Ms. Fox also asked that the board members please bring their concerns to her or the committee so that they can be addressed and considered prior to the full board, by the full board prior to discussion and or vote. There was a discussion about the health curriculum. The first thing is a correction to a previous report I made. When I reported out the curriculum committee report from the May 5th, 2023 meeting, I did so at the May 22nd board meeting, which was a BT Connect meeting. And in that report, I incorrectly stated that for standard 2.1.2.pgd.5, which is list medically accurate names for body parts, including the genitals, second grade teachers would provide students with 8 medically accurate names for genitals, which were listed in the teacher's edition of the Great Body Shop. The student version of the Great Body Shop does not include any names for genitals. But in reality, for the 22-23 school year, the second grade teachers only provided students with that medically accurate names for 4 body parts: buttocks, penis, vagina, and breast. This change was made during curriculum writing to go from the 8 accurate names to 4 accurate names based upon the staff and parent feedback. I apologize for the mistaken reporting. We went through the survey responses, both the collated statistics and the open-ended responses. There were 271 responses to the community survey, 534 total responses, with 349 unique responses to the parent survey. Survey response totals were provided in the table below attached to the minutes. We discussed the opt-out process, so the final numbers for the 22-23 school year: 42 students out of 4,698 opted out of at least one lesson in the health curriculum. There were per grade numbers provided in the form below, in the table below. We also discussed the revised opt-out process and an introduction of the health curriculum. So for the 23-24 school year, Ms. Fox proposed that the letter, which is linked in the minutes, regarding the health curriculum and the opt-out form, which is also linked, would be sent to all parents and guardians at the beginning of the school year. The letter will include a link to Rubicon and Atlas where parents can review the curriculum and course materials for all units and lessons, a list of all learning outcomes for each unit, and resources used in the lesson, including reading materials, worksheets, videos, and worksheets. The letter will also include the new opt-out form, which will identify units and lessons applicable to the parent's child and give parents the option to select specific units and/or specific lessons to opt out of. One board member asked to include language in the letter reminding parents that they can opt their students out of instruction on any topic instead of calling out 12 standards. We had that discussion last time at the last meeting. Parents will also be notified in advance of classroom instruction, providing parents with another opt-out reminder. For grades K through 5, this will occur at least 1 week prior to the beginning of each unit, and for grades 6 through 8, this will occur at the beginning of the marking period when the child begins their health course. If parents would like to opt their students out of any unit and/or lesson, the district asks that the parents please use the Google form that will be linked in the letter that they receive. The form output is processed by principals and classroom teachers and will allow the district to track responses. So, for example, that no individual letters or emails to teachers get overlooked. Follow up with parents and will allow the teachers to follow up with parents where necessary and ensure that opt-outs are properly recognized and implemented. Then there's a discussion related to the 12 standards that we had last time. And that's it.
Questions? Ms. White?
Tim, can you just clarify, because the parents may not know, when you say unique responses, can you just explain what that means?
Kristen can correct me if I'm wrong, but if a parent had multiple kids in the district and filled out their survey for their second grader, fifth grader, and eighth grader, we resolve that back to one unique response per family. So we try to identify the family responses rather than just also the individual students, but we have both numbers and both are reported out.
Ms. Light?
I'm sorry.
Oh, your light's on.
Your light's on.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Okay, as there's no voting items, we'll move on to wellness. There's no report. Is there anything you want to
No,
share?
we'll meet in September.
Okay, same things for facility and ops. Anything to, okay. That brings us to liaison committee reports. No, I did have a little something on that. I had the opportunity to go to, if I can find my notes, the Somerset County Educational Services Commission meeting on August 28th. Here's my notes. Just talk about a little bit, but might be a little bit of food for thought. Anybody jump in, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, I believe you were a liaison in the past. They make a good portion of their income from busing. They actually sold the vast majority of their buses, and they netted about $2.75 million from that. They kept a few. They're renting some out to Hillsborough. The takeaway that I took, the superintendent there, and this is something that we're already looking at, really advised all the representative districts there to consider hybrid models when it comes to busing, owning some buses, also chartering some buses, doing a mix of things, because the transportation crisis is not unique to Berners Township by any means. So I thought that was interesting food for thought just to bring back and report out on. But that was pretty much the extent of it. The rest of it was pretty much regular operational business down there. All right. Then we'll keep moving along, and that'll bring us to public comment on non-agenda items.
Hi, I'm Desiree Noland, 88 Harrison Brook Drive in Basking Ridge. Longtime listener, first-time caller. I just wanted to reach out because I had sent an email previously and CC'd the BOE, Mr. Syed, and Mr. McCarron on regarding our classroom sizes. I am a fourth grade parent and a first grade parent over at LCS. I am a previous educator. I'm a behaviorist. I love my data. And we look at the data, and our class sizes have historically stayed under 20 kids per class and within the past 10 years. And recently, last year and this year, they're creeping up over 20 kids per class, and it's going to hinder our students. Our State is taking this into account, especially for our 3rd and 4th graders. And this year, our kids at LCS are reaping the burden of it and only getting 3 sections. So their class sizes are going to be closer to 23, 24 kids per class, which the guidelines as part of the BOE that we try to follow are 22 for kindergarten and 25 for our 3 through 5 grades. But as we know, people move into this district. It's a fantastic district because of its education that it provides. And we want to continue to provide that education for our kiddos. The only person that had reached out to me on behalf of the BOE was Mr. Rauschio. And I would like to read his email. It states that my kids all went to LCS, which means he's probably my neighbor, which is fantastic. So I wanted to reach out directly, which I totally appreciate. These decisions are made by the superintendent with input from each principal, so I'd encourage you to stay on top of them, and more specifically, Mr. Syed, who is in charge of staffing, and copy Nimesh Amin, BOE VP and head of personnel of the personnel committee. 2 years before my kids started LCS, they were doing away with full-day kindergarten, which thankfully never went through. I also think we had around 21, maybe 22 kids per class at LCS, and it made a difference. Keep up the pressure. The district has the resources, but it takes good management to keep classes smaller and running efficiently. Learning loss should be the #1 priority for the school right now, especially for the 3rd through 4th graders. My kids were a bit older, 7th and 9th at the time, but people like you bore the brunt of the entire fiasco. Keep in mind that we were over budget a few million a year. Think about it as you or I saving each year, so we don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. So there is always money available for these type of things. I tell you and others about this because it's far too easy for them to say that they don't have the money. Please feel free to reach out to me directly, and he gave his number, if you'd like to speak more about this. So I'm asking, if the money is there and we need more teachers, why are we not allocating it to the kids that suffered the most during the COVID crisis and supporting them during that time? And this is not just me, it's on behalf of the other 4th grade parents, because we've all been discussing it, we've all sent emails. So I'm asking you to reconsider that for our kids so that they get the support that they need during the school year, and the teachers can do what they need to do and teach academics instead of sitting there and focusing on classroom management and behavior protocols. So thank you.
Hi, Stacy Letty, 67 Spencer Road. I was just wanting to, was hoping to hear, since we had a facilities committee readout today, or it was on the agenda, I was hoping to get an update on what is happening at the high school with the sewage problem. As I'm sure you are all aware, we had an unfortunate Coxsackie outbreak in our athletic teams this year, recently in the last couple weeks, which is no doubt a direct result of the fact that the kids are using porta potties during practice with no sanitary, no way to wash their hands after they go to the bathroom, and then they're going back to practice and all over each other. I know it's now spread to a second team. And I appreciate the fact that they shut everything down for a couple days and disinfected, but that doesn't do us any good considering the problem is still there. And we have people that are going to be coming to our facilities using our bathrooms. I'm assuming now they're going to be using the porta potties, and we still have a locker room that is shut down. The boys can't use it for the football team. I know they're schlepping through the school to go to another locker room, but during practice, using the porta potties. So I know that this board was very committed last year to fixing a lot of our facilities, and that seems to be one of the most urgent problems, and I was just looking for an update on that.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Moran, 20 Village Drive, Basking Ridge. I'm a relatively new resident, having lived here for just over a year. I'm a little older than most of the people in this room, but I do have a stake in your educational system. We have custody of a second grader at Cedar Hill, and she has had an excellent, really, did I say first grader? Well, she's a second grader on September 6th. She had a wonderful first grade year at Cedar Hill. I was interested to hear the information about the sociology class. I hope it's going to be offered. I just have a few other things to say. I have knowledge of quite a few school districts around and about. I was an educator for 32 years in Washington Township, Long Valley. I'm raising my fourth child, and one graduated from Madison, two from Randolph, and I've put in some time in some other places. I understand the difficulty people have accepting change. Since my elementary school days in the 50s in Middlesex Borough, things have changed dramatically. Since my early career in the 80s, the early years of my career, we didn't know what to do with children, for children really, on the spectrum. A lot has changed, and I have empathy for that.
Ma'am, your time is up.
Okay, I have no sympathy, however, just one sentence. I'm sorry, I wasn't fast enough. I really am sorry. I don't want any reduction in the intellectual rigor and the comprehensiveness of the education that is offered to my bright and curious granddaughter in this school district. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
Hi, good evening. You know, the first public comment was kind of non-existent. I know it's supposed to be limited. Yes.
You have to give your name and your address.
Sorry, Nestlehun Montag, 41 Essex
Thank you.
Place. I did have an agenda-related and a non-agenda-related public comment, but unfortunately I was late, so maybe the board could give a little indulgence to me or other public members to go on a little bit longer since the first public comment didn't happen. A few things. One is, you know, we're starting a new year. Everyone's excited to jump in, but to be honest, the level of dysfunction that we've seen publicly demonstrated on this board has been just mind-blowing, and we are hoping, we're more concerned than ever going into this year that that hasn't changed, and if anything, it's gotten worse. The first speaker pointed out that there's a sitting board member who admittedly is running for re-election as an incumbent, but he is still, like the other incumbent, running subject to the Code of Ethics and board rules governing communications by board members. And as we understand it, the district policy provides that any board member who receives an email from the member of the public does not reach out and go rogue on their own and provide whatever spin or information they want to do. They are required to share it with the full board and the superintendent, because there are rules in place to ensure that the public gets accurate information at all times. Not information that someone is spinning for a campaign, not information where they're throwing administrators or other people under the bus because it suits their personal purposes. So I would urge the board, maybe in forum, to review the rules that are required of board members in their communications with the public. I remember one board member way back when suggested that a third party might come in to help educate and retrain and reiterate to the newest board members the proper procedures and board policies and protocols, since they don't seem to feel the need to follow them, and they haven't followed them all year. As we start a new school year, we're still left with no sociology textbook that's acceptable. We're a year into this now, and due to the actions of this new board majority, the same 5 board members who keep rejecting one book after another, even though they've been recommended, thoroughly vetted, and recommended by teachers who are experienced professionals, the objections that have been raised, frankly, underscore the importance of why it's necessary to defer to proper expertise, instead of just lay people who really have no idea about the purpose of the course, the proper use of sociology textbook and supplemental materials, and the way that teachers actually teach using all of these things in order to encourage our students to develop their critical thinking skills. I know my time's almost up. Anyway, it's the same 5 people that keep rejecting the book. The Schaefer textbook was recommended. They had 2 objections. Both objections were addressed. That was it. They never went back to that book, and they demanded that the teachers bring them another book. So the teachers had to do all this extra
Ma'am,
work.
your time is up.
Thank you. If I can finish my thought, I'd appreciate it. The teachers did all this extra work. They came with the second textbook that the same 5 people rejected, and now they've responded. The social studies coordinator, supervisor, sorry, I'm rushing, has responded to all the objections they raised to the Schaefer book. So my question to you, and maybe this can be raised in board forum, is now that those objections have been addressed, why is that book not being put up for a vote? And if so, please explain. Thank you.
Lyndon S154 South Allward Avenue. Just before I came to the meeting, I read the curriculum committee minutes that have been posted, including the comments by the response put together by Ms. Fox and Mr. Terry to the objections for the Schaefer sociology book, most of which were raised only during the roll call vote, and they were not shared as they should have been with the head of curriculum before the vote. So I just wanted to say that, and I actually, after this vote, rejecting Schaefer, I bought the book a while ago, and I looked at it, but I went home and I read it cover to cover. It really, I'm not a sociologist, but I have taken a number of science courses and a lot of math, so I read it cover to cover quite carefully, you know, taking notes in response to the comments. And the reason I did that is because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the board members who read it and gave comments did not seem to understand that it was a science book, in particular a social science book, and that balanced perspectives were presented. But the comments provided by Ms. Fox and Mr. Terry were really, truly exceptional. I mean, I read the book and I thought about it a lot. They were exceptional. They should be published to the entire community because, and the way they were communicated is fabulous, as an indication of the quality of the teachers that we have in this community. They are astounding. Of course, it does raise the question of why on earth it wasn't approved, and maybe now that they think about it, they will approve it, but the comments were the response was just exceptional.
John Coyle, 22 Benedict. When I hear people talk about the rules and regarding board members during the process of campaigning, I think it's really important we take a step back and look at what happened 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we had a board president, Ms. McCarron, who came to a township committee meeting and presented herself. And second, questioned why members of the committee were making contributions to a campaign. 2, she showed up at a diversity committee meeting and campaigned actively there as well, and stepping out of her role. And 3, very evident, Superintendent McCarron wrote a letter defending some of the questions that were asked about him, which was clearly on the instruction of the board president. So what's good for one needs to be good for all. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joan Bannon. I live at Patriot Hill Drive. I was at the Diversity and Inclusion Committee meeting. Ms. McCarron did not campaign there. I was there the entire time. I also want to commend the responses to the sociology text. That's why my kids got such a great education in this town, and I hope that every other resident who has children in this school are as fortunate as my children were. Recently, a member of our town sought information through the Open Public Records Act. Other than a few interesting emails from a former campaign manager criticizing free speech exercised by teachers at Board of Ed meetings, or an email by a former mayor praising Board of Education members for the rejection of a needed sociology textbook, extolling it as a victory and attaching a copy of the Gospel according to Hillsdale College, there were two partial responses that caused me grave concern and speak loudly, in my view, why culture wars and personal ideology and political agendas have no place on the Board of Education. Open Public Record Acts can be denied if the request seeks information that falls under the deliberative process privilege. So if BOE members in the committee exchange emails where they discussed advisory, consultative, or deliberative materials, those materials do not have to be provided. And I'm sure the Board of Ed members know this as you all receive training, as I'm sure you also receive training with respect to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act, which prohibits a quorum of members to conduct business or deliberate without notice to the public and in the presence of the public. It seems, based on what I've seen, these laws were not followed. Specifically, excluded from production were 46 pages of email correspondence between Ms. Light, Mr. Racio, Mr. Molinari, Mr. Amin, and Ms. Sisbach, dated March 10th, 2023, regarding budget analysis. The reason for the non-production was based on deliberative process privilege. A second email, dated March 11th, 2023, from one of these board members to the same other board members, stated that she had ran the new numbers through the spreadsheets that they had received that night and attached the new analysis. And she asked her colleagues to make sure they all spoke before the meeting on Monday night. Now, please explain to me how this is not a violation of either the Open Public Meeting Act or the Open Public Record Act. In my view, when people are motivated by their own political ends in what they consider a war, sometimes they feel they don't have to follow the rules or be transparent as they promise. Is that what happened? This is not a war field. This is my hometown. It's my kids' hometown, and this should not happen.
Hi, Victoria Costa, 15 Hilltop Road. I wasn't prepared to speak tonight, but I'm really getting tired of the sociology book. I read the book cover to cover, and I'm really shocked that there's a lot of people that are for this. I'm gonna tell you, any person of color in this town, or any person that is Asian, Black, or brown, should be highly disgusted about the support for this. I'm going to read you an excerpt from the book, the digital version, page 107. In the lower class, the Hispanic family suffers from pervasive tradition of male domination. I've read this to 15 Latinos in town, on both sides of the aisle, and find this utterly disgusting that this isn't a textbook. Let me read it again. In the lower class, the Hispanic family suffers from pervasive tradition of male domination. I'm gonna tell you, I grew up lower class Hispanic in Jersey City and Bayonne. My father had 2 jobs to put me to Catholic school. He swept floors in office buildings at night. You know, like people who clean your homes during the day. I find this extremely offensive that this isn't a book that our kids are learning. Number two, I'm really getting tired of a lot of people in this audience stating that it's about politics, because I come to almost every meeting, and I'm going to tell you this. The majority of people on the Democratic board in town who have office positions come here. Not the Republican side, the Democrat side. Here's another thing I want to point out. Not only do they come, but they take videos. You think they're really here for your kids when they're videotaping people? What benefit do our kids get out of this? This is politics. And I was a Democrat that walked away because Democrats do nothing for the people of color. So let them tell you all the time, it's about politics. I want these people to raise their hands. How many of them sit on that Democratic board? It's nothing but disgusting. And they're not here for the kids, and don't convince yourself of anything different.
Hello, Lauren Zugel, 28 Meadowview Road. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I do have a question that relates to politics, because recently I've been receiving multiple emails from a party line, a candidate line, running for the Board of Education, and I've questioned the people that are on that email. How did you get my email address? I've received no response. It happened again. I emailed those people again. I received no response. So I am curious if there are protocols. I'm asking out of transparency. I really don't know. Are there protocols for how people who are running for the Board of Education are gaining email and phone number access to people? Because I do wonder if it is connected to what party I am affiliated with in town voting for. So thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Okay, that will close second public comment. Mr. McCarron, anything you want to address?
Sure, thanks, Mr. Molinari. So, with respect to the class size question, thank you for your email to the board. I can tell you from the board's policy perspective, we, as you noted, try to manage class size with the guidelines established in our policy, 22 students, K1, 2, and 25 grades 3, 4, 5. To your point about 23, 24 students, at the end of the summer or the beginning of the fall, it's certainly a point well made. Historically, we have seen class sizes in a range anywhere from 17 or 18 up to 26, 27 kids sometimes. And obviously, that's a little bit above our guideline, and the reason that it happens is I think sometimes what you pointed out, which is that it is possible that kids move into town. You can't always predict that exactly. And, at some point over the summer and once you hit, late July, beginning of August, it's kind of go time. You have to get everything set, have to get your staff all set. And that's why we have the policy that we do to try to have a guideline to use. It doesn't mean that if class size gets a little big, that it is automatically a problem. I think the important thing is that we have supports in place for the students. We actually have a class period what I need to try to make sure that we're giving the students everything that they need. So, I think that it's important that we not only pay attention to class size, but also that we pay attention to the individual needs of the students, and where we recognize that a student has a need, that we meet that need. one of the folks that emailed me about this class size issue also shared with me, and I'm sorry, I don't remember if it was Mrs. Nolan's email or someone else's email, but you know, the state has recently announced a grant providing some funds for what they're calling high-impact tutoring. So actually, as part of tonight's agenda, we approved the ability to apply for that grant. So we'll be pursuing that grant, and that'll give us, hopefully, another funding source that can help us have more resources in the event that somebody needs some one-on-one tutoring or small group tutoring. We're going to be looking to set that up this fall and communicating more about that in the future, but we want to see if this grant comes through as well as a resource for that. So, you know, and that's on top of a lot of resources that we do have in the elementary schools to support the students, whether it's with math specialists or reading specialists. You know, certainly it's important to be paying attention to class size, no doubt, but also to pay attention to the needs of the individual kids and have resources at play to support them, and I think we're well positioned to do that. A question about the Ridge High School wastewater line. There was a problem with the wastewater line that goes underneath the locker room at Ridge, and we have been dealing with that. I wanted to just explain a little bit about that and the porta potties that somebody mentioned. So one of the measures that we were doing to address that waste line was, I think, Mr. Rollo, they call it pressure jetting or jetting of the lines with water. So kind of coming through the building, working downstream through the waste system and pressure flushing the system, and that was successful. And we know it was successful because following the cleaning, we ran a camera down through the lines to make sure that there was no blockages all the way through to the main manhole outgoing. So we believe that that is resolved. And in the interim, we did have those porta potties outside for the day that we were, a couple days that we were doing the jetting of the lines. We wanted to make it a little more convenient for the athletes that were there to not necessarily have to hike to a further restroom. So we did put a couple porta-johns outside. If I understand it correctly, it was a 1-month contract. So we're leaving them there for convenience through the month of August, a couple more days, but all the bathroom facilities are also open so the kids can go into the building where they can use the porta-johns. And we added some hand cleaning stations at the porta-johns in the event that the kids were using those. So they'll probably be gone in a couple of days. And we did a lot of extra cleaning in response to the health problem that some students had in those facilities, and tried to communicate with the athletic teams through our nursing services to provide some guidance as to you know, what we could do to take care of the kids' health, and put some extra monitoring in place that we're probably going to keep going for about another week or so. But certainly, I think we're in a good place now in terms of all the cleaning that we did, and I think our drainage line is fine at this point, but obviously something that we'll be monitoring going forward. There was a question about, excuse me, whether or not we were running sociology. The sociology elective is running. We certainly have no interest in reducing rigor anywhere in any of our classes. Let's see. I think the last question, the only other thing I could respond to a little bit is the question of emails, how people might be receiving an email, the source of the email contact. I can't speak to that. I'm not sure how individuals obtain email addresses to send information out. Sorry, I can't really provide an explanation for that, but it's something that comes up, I think, pretty regularly during campaign season. How am I getting these email addresses? I'm not really sure, so I'm sorry about that one.
Nick, I can provide some
Sure.
color on that if you'd like. There are a lot of firms that actually have consultants that have developed email lists and marketing lists related to this that campaigns will purchase those items from.
Okay. That's going to move us on to board forum. I have a couple things to say before we kick it off. We have a couple items on board forum that we're going to talk about a bit, board goals, district goals among them. And since we're going to be discussing that, and I'm speaking for myself, I think it's appropriate to take stock of what this district, the board, the district, the staff, everyone has accomplished so far this year. The 0% tax increase, and it's been done responsibly, and it's offered a little bit of a breathing room for taxpayers. There's going to be a continuing close examination of district expenses. And one thing everybody should realize is that nothing works for our students if the finances don't work. And we are delivering on our charge of providing the best possible education that the community can afford. Along those lines, district funds have been moved into accounts that will not only get a better rate of return, which is subject to market conditions, but also have fee structures that are more favorable to the district. Increased collaboration with the township is also providing savings. Cost sharing on the paving the entranceway into Ridge High School for the municipal complex, a project that's been long asked for. Additional joint efforts are still being explored. And this collaboration has also facilitated the hiring of SLEOs for all of our schools, an action that follows a recommendation of our town's police force. Close attention is being paid to our facilities, as Mr. McCarron just mentioned. This focus has led to cite another example, the Ridge softball team playing on their home field after enduring a year at Pleasant Valley Park. District's also striving to reduce unfilled work orders. Mr. Wall is doing great work in that regard and improve conditions for our students and our teachers. None of this happens overnight, but we're moving in the right direction. I'm proud the BOE has revisited how the health curriculum is going to be delivered. This effort is in line with community concerns, and it seems like we're going to land in a place that takes into account as wide a swath of community opinions as possible. And I'm also proud that the BOE is now reviewing materials they are approving, expected to approve, and in some cases, turning down unbalanced materials. We can do better for our students. Communication with the community is constantly being worked on, from BT Connects to the new initiative to post our committee meetings minutes prior to board meetings so the community comes to these meetings better informed. We're striving to be as transparent in that respect as possible. Now, I recognize this has been a different year for the school district. There's been a good amount of debate, which is healthy. That's where good results come from. And we've had good results. It's been a year of good results, increased oversight, and a stronger voice for the entire community on how their children are educated and how their taxes are spent. And it's my hope that we can continue that momentum into the new school year. And that's my piece for board forum. So I know we have a couple things to get to. Anybody else? Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about that, Mr. McCarron?
Sure. So there's been some ideas generated, some draft ideas generated by myself, some board members, and I just want to make sure that everyone has a copy of that. So I just want to make sure we give some hard copies out. And we talked just to make sure I have enough, talked very briefly about this at the last Board of Ed meeting when we were missing a few board members. Tonight we're missing a couple. So what I'd like to ask the board members to do is to just take a look at these ideas. In particular, there's some ideas that kind of speak to some benchmarking of assessments and maybe add some thoughts about that if you had any specifics to clarify a little bit about what you might mean on that idea of benchmark assessments. And then if you can share your thoughts with me, I'll kind of collect them all together and try to redraft maybe one document to circulate to you guys even before the next board meeting. And definitely by the next board meeting have hopefully maybe a cleaned up draft for discussion when hopefully we have all 9 of us here. So that'll be my goal between now and September 18th.
Anybody else for board forum? Ms. McCarron.
Well, are we moving to the next item, or is this anything else for board forum? Because I have stuff, but
Yes, board self-evaluation.
Board self-evaluation. Okay, we'll do that then. So, are we going to get the form to fill out soon? I assume, and then you're planning to open that up for the board members?
Yeah, do you think that would be a good goal to have for our next meeting?
To have it completed so we can discuss it? Yeah, I
Yes.
think that would be good. What's the last item on here? I'll hold my other comments until we finish these items, I guess.
Yeah, maybe 11th?
If board members do it by, I think it takes a day or two to collate the results.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can get that done by the 11th, get the self-evaluation in, that takes a couple days to collate the results, and that way we'll have it ready to discuss at the September 18th meeting.
I can send out some instructions, reminders on how to do it.
Any objections? Okay. Anything else on the board self-evaluation? And the last item on board forum is board committees. Somebody want to speak to that? Ms. White.
Yeah, I had brought this up a couple meetings ago that, and maybe this will come out of goals and the self-evaluation, but we need to have, going into this year, some rules, so to speak, of how we are filling the fourth spot for committees that don't have 4 members, because there's a lot of confusion as to, is it first come, first serve? Is it if you haven't attended, then you get first shot at it? Is it the same people always get to attend? I have found it's like pulling teeth to get anybody to come to wellness. I'm always asking somebody to come. I know the intention was that if we left a couple of committees with an open spot, it would encourage people to try and sit in all the different ones. I know you did come, but that's not the case for all the committees. So I think that we need to have, is it the alternate is the default? Is it the alternate is only the default if nobody else is available? Who does the person go to when you cannot go? Do you go to the alternate? Do you go to whoever sent the email first? We just need to have, some specifics as to what is fair and informative for everybody.
Can we refer this to the policy committee since that process is laid out in one of our board policies?
We can send it to policy. I don't think we specified exactly how the alternates were getting picked I think it was the regulation. It wasn't a policy for board committees, but we can certainly discuss it. I mean, I agree with what Jen said. It's been pretty chaotic trying to keep track of. And also, I have said when we made the committees that I don't like the idea of 3-person committees. There have been a fair number, not a lot, but some committee meetings where there was not a 4th person, and I think it's not as effective. I think we had an example this summer with the personnel committee where the alternate, I guess, wasn't lined up, and only 3 of us were there, and it's a really important topic, which we can talk about in a minute. So I really think we should try to fill the 4th spot at all times so that as many board members as possible know what's going on and are able to weigh in on things.
I think the 4th spot is spelled out, you're right, in policy for committees that have 4. Like there's it automatically is the alternate. I think the issue is it's the committees that don't have 4 people.
Well, I also think, to be honest with you, I also think that we need to have a policy to be able to ensure that everybody gets to a committee meeting that you want. I've been trying all year to get to a personnel committee meeting, and nobody seems to be willing to give up a spot at any given time. So I would also like to see in that policy some kind of rotation where somebody, we have a drop that somebody that's not the alternate can actually attend as well. I think that will get more views on the committee, more insight into what goes on, because as of right now, the only committee I haven't almost in the year and a half I've been on board is personnel. And that's the only one I haven't been to. So I'd like to see not only, a policy for the alternate and how the alternate is chosen in our 3-person committees, but also revamp the alternate structure so that perhaps we can make it a policy to rotate in everybody so that everybody attends at least one of those each committee meeting in a school year so that they can see what it's like as well.
So we're saying we'll send it back to policy, discuss it in the policy committee.
That'd be my recommendation, yes.
Show of hands. Everybody okay with that? All right. Anything else for board forum? Mr. McCarron.
Before I wanted to respond to a number of the public comments, but before that, did I hear that correctly with one public comment? Were there 5 board members? I mean, you're sitting here emailing around together all at once?
I looked up that email that was referenced. There were 5 sent. There was an email sent out to 4 board members. Nobody that I saw replied to it. So it was shut down right there and then. There was no discussion of online with 5 people. There was 1 email that went out.
There wasn't a discussion with 5 board members?
No. Anybody else? Motion to adjourn? No?
I just would like to recap our evening because we did have training tonight and we are starting a new school year. And I'm going to speak of what you just brought up. I don't know anything about that email that was in reference because I wasn't included in it, which is a good thing. And I would really like to, as we move forward for this year, we've had a lot of discussion about dysfunction. And I don't think that we have dysfunction. I think that we have had opportunities where some individuals have not followed certain processes and policies, and that's what we discussed tonight. And I hope going forward that we all can agree that these policies and processes exist for a reason, regardless of our personal opinions, our beliefs, whatever people have come and questions they've brought to us, and that we can move forward following the fact that, those processes will be followed by all of them, because we do take an oath of office. We do have to follow the code of ethics, and it is clear this past year that was not always followed by all of us. So I guess it's just my plea. This is the start of a new year that I don't want to be hearing that an email was sent out to discuss something to just 5 members of the board, because not only is it not allowed, it's just not a way to work collegially with the full board.
And I 100% agree with you, John, but I think we also need to distinguish between a violation of the code of ethics and a violation of policy, or not following a policy. And I think over the course of the last year and a half that at least I've been on the board, there's been some confusion and blurred lines between the two, unfortunately.
Ms. McCarron.
I don't even know where to start with all the other things I wanted to talk about. Let's start with the public comments about class size. I know Mr. McCarron responded to that. I wasn't at the last meeting when there was a personnel committee report. I've been on the board for a really long time, and class size comes up periodically. There's always an unlucky grade at an unlucky school or a couple unlucky grades that get the biggest class size, because no matter how you slice it, you got to draw the line somewhere. So whatever the policy is for the district, you can't make it come out even when you're dividing into 3 sections or 4 sections, and there's equity issues. If one school gets another teacher, then the other school that had this, one less kid, do they get one? So it's always a tricky thing, and it's hard, and there's, it kind of varies which grade and which school, has a couple, groups that are not happy at the beginning of the year, and then sometimes we're unlucky and a lot of people move in at the last minute or during the year in a particular grade, and it gets worse. So there's no ideal solution to that, and there never has been. I think, some of the confusion in the community, that I've heard in the last week was, the idea of how does it get decided? We do have the class size policies we try to abide by, but again, sometimes you can't completely control that at the last minute. I think we've had a lot of discussions during COVID. We hired lots of extra teachers, and coming out of COVID to try to keep class sizes small. So I think it is something that the board as a whole, should have discussions about. there was a request at the Personnel Committee meeting, as always in July, they're trying to guess at the last minute, you know, how many kids are at each school, how many are going to move in at the last minute and not register till like the day before school starts. And so the administration always comes to us with like a guesstimate of where it's going to come out, and the principals all, you know, try to do their best guesses. And they all, of course, all want small classes at their school, so they're always lobbying for like, oh, I'd like another teacher, I'd like another teacher. So it's always a tricky thing, and everyone doesn't always get what they want. You know, Jen and I were at that meeting. We did, you know, support hiring 4 teachers instead of 3. And we talked about being proactive because you never know who's going to move in August. So I think it was something that should have been discussed more fully when the Personnel Committee reported out. There was also a request to add a floater counselor, another floater counselor for the K-5 schools that did not go through, which I would have supported also. So, you know, I'm disappointed that there wasn't more discussion at the meeting that I missed. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say about that at this point.
Well, I think it's important to note as well that, you know, by adding a teacher just at LCS when classes are of similar size in the other 3 districts brought up the question of equity, because if we do it for one, then we need to do it for all. So, you know, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but in this focus of equity amongst our students right now, I think we're being consistent with that mandate.
Mr. Salmon.
Yeah, so I was at the last meeting on the floater counselor for elementary. There was something about getting some metrics or some data about something beyond just the numbers, right? So like if you look in the elementary schools, there's more students per counselor than in any other level. So beyond that, we were waiting for some other metrics or something to come at the next personnel meeting, Sean, right? That's what I understood.
It's going to be anecdotal. I already spoke to Ms. Smith about it. She's going to talk about more lunch groups, more one-on-ones with kids, more ability to deal social-emotional. I mean, we're seeing more trauma with students at that age, so to be able to set up specialized groups, that was the focus. For those 2 floater counselors to be able to get to know those kids, that population, at 2 buildings as compared to 4 buildings where they just can't develop those deeper relationships, because the goal would be to set up regular meetings with these kids, not just to focus on the social emotional and the coping skills, but then also to better prepare them to be able to go back into classes and handle the rigor. And that was really the reason to add that second counselor. Now, ironically, we had a leave replacement counselor that we've had to pull the floater. Thank goodness we had that floater, because we had a difficult time filling a 3-month leave at Cedar Hill. So we've moved that floater, thank goodness, to Cedar Hill to cover that position. But, you know, it's still our goal, hopefully, to add that second floater counselor at the elementary level. So but we can talk more anecdotally from Ms. Smith at the upcoming personnel meeting in September.
And that'll be the basis of a renewed request.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you'll hear.
Yeah, okay.
You know, if I give you a preview of it, that's a lot of what you're going to hear. More specific titled groups is what you'll be sharing, some of the groups that we'd like to work with students in. Small group.
Ms. White.
I do find the issue with the school counselor frustrating, because I was, as wellness chair, have read out the minutes, and I read out the Trends in Mental Health report this spring, and I did provide metrics, and this year was the first year that we kept track of all the visits at the elementary school level, so we had all that information available to us. And as I said back in July, I always think it's better that we are proactive rather than reactive, and unfortunately, we are now in a reactive mode that we're starting the school year shorting the elementary school to guidance counselor, and I'm sure some of it has to do with, just like there's a teacher shortage, I think there's probably a guidance counselor shortage, and it's not easy to get people, you know, for 3 months when they want job security, so they're probably going someplace else where they can get more of that, but that leaves our children in the lurch, and that's beyond unfortunate. In my opinion, we should never be in reactive position when we have the ability to be proactive. That being said, I I would like to see us moving forward and talking more about things like this. We spent an exorbitant amount of time this past year talking about the same issues over and over and rehashing them and rehashing them and rehashing them, and we didn't get to the heart of what needs to be talked about, which is our students, how they're doing academically, how did they do all 4 marking periods, how did they do on MAP testing? How did they do on their APs this year? What courses have high enrollment? What courses have low enrollment? What do our students need in terms of support? We need to start having those conversations again, and as much as I support the sociology textbook, and I did, it's a new year, we need to move on from that and really focus on the kids and what's in their best interest. And it doesn't help us to keep rehashing the past, but I do think that we need to get back to talking about how we provide academic excellence and support to all the students in this school. And that also means what we can do to support the teachers as well. And I'm glad we've positioned ourselves this year the way we have, but I would just like to get back to those really important conversations.
I could not agree with you more.
Anybody else for board forum? Ms. McCarron.
Sorry. So this is actually in response to some of the stuff that you said at the beginning of board forum. I just had a couple of questions, first of all, about the cost savings and shared services. I understand the driveway, I didn't drive up in there, but that it is paved now. I'm glad that that finally got done. In terms of cost savings for the SLEO 3s and stuff, I'm confused by that because I thought we took on the cost of that.
No, that wasn't a commentary on the cost savings of the SEO 3s. It was a commentary of collaborating with the township, specifically the police department, to bring those officers into the schools, not share the cost.
Okay. Okay, and I just want to follow up on what Jen just said about, I totally agree with what she said about focusing on the things that are important. I do feel like I'm not going to do a surprise motion because that's not cool, but I wish we could make a motion to just hire the counselor and be proactive because we all know how the market is right now, and it just makes me sad that we didn't move forward with that this summer. And when they asked us for the teachers for the elementary school, that there's a message being sent on the one hand that we have the money, we can afford this, on the other hand, we want to cut costs and not hire staff. So I think it's a real mixed message. And I think that for the administration, it's really hard for them to manage to come forward and make requests when they've been made quite clear, that people want to cut positions or not hire certain positions and, or want more data before we fill positions. And then on the other hand, then people are upset because we didn't hire and fill these positions. So I just find that I'm sure the public is frustrated by it too.
Well, I think it's, it's a complex issue. You reference the teachers. So you get these class sizes that are going up close to the limit at LCS, right? And you also have other schools where the class sizes are going up to the limit too. So if you hire at the other schools, and yeah, we have the money to do that, but what if you have no room for it? What if you don't have room for a class? Now, are you taking away an art section, a music section? Are we going out the bond to put additions on the schools? I mean, there's a cascade of consequences that come from every decision, even one as seemingly localized as hiring the additional teachers at LCS. So it's a good board discussion, and to your point, it's one I'd much rather have than some of the things we've had been spending a lot of time on. Ms. Light.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the counselor, I would support the additional counselor too, particularly since we have one that's now subbing in, so we actually need a sub for the sub, right, at this point. But I do very vaguely seem to remember about some additional metrics that we were looking for, but I can't off the top of my head remember what they were. But I would love to participate in that personnel committee meeting. Just another plug.
Anybody else? Ms. Chivar.
Yes, I was going to ask Mr. McCarron to tell us how we compare to other school districts with our class sizes.
Thanks. So, not knowing this moment today what it's looking like in other districts, in reality, we did look a little bit at a couple policies from some comparable districts, and they had similar guidelines for class size. I think I shared that. You had asked that question. I shared that information with the board. That was 2 school districts that we had looked at. I think I put in there. We can certainly look at others, but I think we are pretty typical in the sizes that we try to manage at. But if, the board wants us to look at a few others, it's not too hard to go on, look at their class size policies. They're generally pretty similar and pretty available on their websites.
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn? Ms. Light? Mr. Salmon? All in favor? All right. Gavel, we're adjourned.